Trump said today he's seen new intelligence that the sites were obliterated. Now, I think this was a mistake for him to say if he can't prove it, but here's what he said.
The document said it could be very severe damage, but they didn't take that. They said it could be limited or it could be very severe because it was very early after. Since then, we've collected additional intelligence. We've also spoken to people who have seen the site, and the site is obliterated. And we think everything nuclear is down there. They didn't take it out. Look, we're going to talk to them next week with Iran. We may sign an agreement. I don't know. To me, I don't think it's that necessary. I mean, they had a war, they fought. Now they're going back to their world. I don't care if I have an agreement or not.
Well, but he does have to care that they don't try to restart the program. I mean, that's the whole point, right? So, because there is this push to say that Trump screwed it up, now you're going to see something that you don't usually take. Because if he's going to do one thing heavy and hard, it's defend himself. So the CIA releases a statement. They cite what they claim is a historically accurate source and method that confirms key Iranian nuclear facilities have been destroyed and would take years to rebuild. So what does that mean, and is that enough? I want to bring in somebody who knows. Former director of the CIA, former commander of the military's U.S. Central Command, General David Petraeus. It's good to see you, General. It's been a second.
Good to be back, Chris.
You know, you are politically savvy as well. What do you make of this insistence that the bombings failed? And what do you look at for proof?
Well, frankly, I haven't seen people say the bombings fail. It's really a debate over how much damage was done. The DIA report apparently that was leaked was actually low confidence in what they actually said, so it should not have been given all that credence to begin with. I tend to think that the CIA statement, it aligns, frankly, with my own estimation, which is that severe damage was done to the program. And I think that's about where it should stay until you have the complete battle damage assessment done. And that takes time. Is no set limit for it. You could have a breakthrough. The CIA may have had access to something that enables them to make that statement with high confidence, which is what you really want to see. There are reports that the Israelis actually had some monitors and so forth. That may be the case as well. But you can't help but look at the photographs and realize that you have these punched holes in the mountainside. That's good, actually. That means that it did what it's supposed to, which is to go down into the mountain over time, hundreds of feet. Each one of those culminates its descent with explosion of 5,000 pounds of explosive. You do 12 of those, and it will have done enormous damage to any centrifuges that are in there. Just the sheer blast damage will be significant to these very sensitive instruments. And then if there is the highly enriched uranium in there, as was the case, I believe, there were trucks outside there, maybe some have moved on, and these are questions that do need to be answered. But I think it's important to be a bit measured at this moment in time and just say we can clearly see that there was very substantial damage done to really all of the nuclear facilities, but especially the three that we followed up the Israeli damage with our submarine-launched cruise missiles and then these massive ordnance penetrators. And then we'll see, bigger question is, was there any high-enriched uranium that was stored elsewhere or was taken out before these strikes? And are there centrifuges that are elsewhere as well? Certainly some were in the manufacturing process that may have been stored somewhere else, this kind of thing. That's what we need to determine. And when that's determined, either I think Iran will have to agree to dismantle its entire nuclear program, and I'd like to see that kind of agreement, and to allow the International Atomic Energy Agency to go anywhere they want at any time they want to oversee the process and to verify and validate it. Or Israel will bomb it again. And I think those that say, well, they only set it back a few years, if that's the case, in a few years, Israel will bomb again. I think people do not appreciate how significant 10-7 was for the Israelis in their strategic context. They will no longer allow a threat to be built on their borders or even in the region, the way they did tolerate that in the past with Hezbollah in Lebanon, with Hamas in Gaza, with other proxies elsewhere, and then especially with Iran at home. And I think that's the new reality of the Israeli defense strategy. And I'm quite confident that if, again, material is discovered elsewhere, and one would think, given the intelligent penetration that Mossad demonstrated in the early days of this operation in particular, which is so extraordinary, 12 days and not even a single plane shot down, much less a maintenance problem reported that forced a pilot to bail out. It's really quite extraordinary.
Well,
and our operation of 125 aircraft was very, very impressive as well.
I mean, obviously, you also have the collateral damage, and that's a very impersonal way to put it. You know, they didn't just kill the specific targets. There are a lot of citizens that were hurt as well. And I think that the most sympathetic actor in the entire equation are the people of Iran that are held hostage by that regime. I wanted to ask you one question that's kind of pseudo-political. There is a narrative now, a way of thinking, let's say, in America, that we don't get anything from the alliance with Israel, that they get everything. They get the Iron Dome. They get all of this leverage because they have the big gorilla of the United States standing behind them, but that all the money and all the support doesn't really benefit the United States and that it should change. What is your response to that notion?
Well, look at what they have done to Lebanese Hezbollah, which prevented any progress in Lebanon for a very long period of time. And that's very advantageous for the region in many, many ways. And of course, that region, what really matters, as always, even though we are now net exporters of crude oil and huge exporters of liquid natural gas, is the flow of oil and gas out to the countries that it actually fuels the global economy. They've dramatically reduced Iran's threat to the region. All of the countries were subject to various challenges from Iran over the years or from their proxies. Hamas, that job's not done by any means, but dramatically degraded, and they're not going to be able to be helped by Iran now. And then some of the other proxies that they have as well. These have been murderous. During the surge in Iraq alone, hundreds of our soldiers were killed by the explosively formed penetrators provided to the Shia militia in Iraq by Iran. So seeing Iran cut down in this way in their capabilities, I think, is very, very positive for a region that is very important to the world. Beyond that, there's the moral obligation, I think, that we should take and do take very seriously about a country that we helped bring into existence and repeatedly have come to the rescue of at various times when that was needed, the October 73 war in particular, but others as well. And again, we get a great deal in return when it comes to intelligence sharing, especially partnership in a variety of respects in that world. And then also our defense alliance is very important as well, a defense partnership.
General Petraeus, I appreciate your perspective as always. Thank you for being part of the conversation here on NewsNation.
Good to be with you, Chris. Thanks.
All right, I'll see you again, General. Be well. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.